Hey guys, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the differences between religion and spirituality. Now, you may have heard or even used those terms together. Religion and spirituality are not interchangeable. They aren't opposites, but they're not exactly the same either. So I'm going to tell you today how to tell the difference between religion and spirituality. Now, for thousands of years, humanity has been searching for the truth, the perennial knowledge that constitutes the answers to what are often called the deep soul questions. Questions like, who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose? The most fundamental, the one that most people probably are quoting, is what is the meaning of life? Historically, from the perspective of the soul, there have been two foundational routes to discover these truths: religion and spirituality. Now, although they have many similarities and there is a relationship between the two, there are differences between them. Now, religion, by definition, is a personal set or institutionalized system of religious attitudes, beliefs, and practices, the service and worship of God or the supernatural. Now, spirituality, on the other hand, is an experience of connection to something larger than you, living everyday life in a reverent and sacred manner. Spirituality is the aspect of humanity that refers to the way individuals seek and express meaning and purpose, and the way they experience their connectedness to the moment, to themselves, to others, to nature, and to the sacred. Now, what are the origins of religion and spirituality? Well, religions are almost always based upon the lives, the teachings, and the beliefs of a historical figure: Christ, Buddha, Moses, Muhammad. The details of their lives as holy or highly evolved beings have been carried to us across the mists of time through oral tradition, passed down story to story, and written scriptures. These figures are the subject of worship and devotion and form the foundation of religious practices and rituals in a community. Now, spirituality, by contrast, is more often based upon the practical application of the founders' teachings. Spiritual aspirants heed the advice of Japanese poet Matsuo Basho, who says, "Do not seek to follow in the footsteps of the wise. Seek what they sought." Now, the lines start to blur. And if you think, well, these definitions are starting to get a little blurry and cross into each other's territory, you're right. For example, you may know people who consider themselves spiritual but not religious. And on the other side of the coin, there are those people who are devoutly religious, but they aren't spiritual. So let's try to clear things up by taking a closer look at the most defining differences between religious and spiritual paths. Now, bear in mind that there are no absolutes here. These are distinctions, but there is no absolutes. So they're just general markers, and they're meant to better explore the qualities between two equally valid approaches to seeking the truth. So first, it's objective versus subjective experience. Now, religion on the whole, a form of religion is often an objective experience. In other words, there is usually a greater focus on the externals, like the house of worship, the books of scripture, rituals, observances. This is the equivalent of object referral, in which your attention is placed upon the objects in your experience. Now, spirituality, however, leans more towards self-referral or the internalization of your awareness of your soul. Now, spirituality is an inward journey that involves a shift in awareness rather than some form of external activity. Spirituality is much more about inner understanding than outer worship. That's not to say that worship is not a part of spirituality. It's a matter of where the devotion and the worship are directed. Now, to an external practice, object, or figurehead, or to your soul, your higher self, or the divinity within us. Now, how about organized versus formless? One of the hallmarks of religion is its organization. It's structured, frequently rule-based, constructed to some degree, and it governs the behavior of its members. Moral rules, laws, and doctrines, as well as specific codes and criteria, create the organized structure that contains the religion's specific belief system. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. In more uncertain times, the rules and dogma of organized religion help to give society a sense of certainty and help to guide and comfort those whose faith was lacking. Now, spirituality, though, breaks free from the restrictions and the rigid structure sometimes associated with traditional religion. The person who's following the spiritual path recognizes that he or she is really on a pathless path of self-discovery. They are following not a set of external rules, but their own inner call to spirit. In this way, spirituality can sometimes feel like a rebellious act of going solo and leaving the tribe, very much in the spirit of American philosopher and poet Ralph Waldo Emerson, when he said, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." Next, the traditional versus the evolutionary approach. Now, religion, due to their centuries old history, religions are by nature often deeply rooted in tradition, in ritual, in doctrine. Religious institutions conservatively guard their practices and their values, holding rigidly to the past and the original interpretations of the founders' teachings. This is understandable in that all religions wish to preserve the essence of their teachings so they may be accurately transmitted throughout history. Now, by comparison, spirituality often is less focused on the rigidly traditional approach and often favors an evolutionary mentality. This refers to both a more flexible and adaptive mindset towards core teachings of the great wisdom traditions, but also reflects the understanding that, as the name implies, spiritual growth is an evolutionary process. Spirituality embraces change and the evolution of consciousness. With a spiritual practice, ideas and interpretations change as individuals, society, and the world move forward. How about exclusive versus inclusive? Well, religion, traditional religious beliefs, sometimes based upon rigid interpretations of key teachings, can create an exclusive worldview that isolates those who may not share their views or interpretations. Sadly, this religious in-group mentality can be used to justify the exclusion of minorities or those deemed unworthy of God's favor. Now, spirituality makes no distinction. Instead, it favors an inclusive approach. In the recognition that pure spirit is a unifying force, no one is left out. You are part of the universal hologram, all gods and goddesses in disguise. As men approach me, so I receive them. All paths lead to me. In other words, from a spiritual perspective, no one has a monopoly on the truth. All are welcome. How about belief versus spiritual experience? Now, in religion, at its core, religion is about faith, belief in something based upon unconditional acceptance of the religion's teachings. Unlike the scientific worldview, religions don't require evidence to validate their claims. Through religion, you're taught to have faith in God or the scriptures as being infallible and ultimately, they're the truth of reality. Acceptance and surrender to the divine are taught as the path that leads to ultimate salvation. Now, spirituality doesn't dismiss faith, but it often leans more heavily on direct experience of the soul or divinity. Spiritual practices such as meditation, yoga, silence, and contemplation allow you to make conscious contact with more expanded states of consciousness, thus helping to validate the teachings rather than accepting them on faith alone. You know something because you've tasted the experience yourself and you've allowed it to resonate, as opposed to taking the word of someone else. How about fear versus love? Now, in religion, despite the best intentions, religions can sometimes contain a subtle, or sometimes not so subtle, undercurrent of fear woven into the teaching. The concepts of original sin, divine judgment, God's wrath, or eternal punishment can create a mental environment burdened in worry and anxiety over your worthiness and whether your actions will result in divine retribution or karmic punishment. Your fate in the afterlife can loom like a specter in the back of your mind, subtly influencing your thoughts and your behavior. Now, by contrast, spirituality typically discards the vestiges of fear and worry in favor of a more loving, compassionate approach to life and death. Spirituality embraces a consciousness-based worldview. And that worldview supports all human beings on their path of awakening. It supports them with unconditional love. It supports them with kindness. Your choices and your behaviors are guided not by a fear of punishment, but rather a desire to end suffering and create a beautiful, peaceful, and loving world for everyone. So as you can see, there are notable differences and distinctions between spirituality and religion. However, these comparisons aren't meant to be absolutes or an attempt to polarize anyone one way or the other, or polarize one group against another. Religious beliefs and spiritual beliefs differ in ways in which they're practiced. However, each practice serves as a vehicle to lead you closer to the truth that you seek. Whichever path or combination of the two you follow is the personal and subjective expression of the journey that you're walking, the path that you're on, and where you are on your path of awakening. I want to thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to visit my new website. It's brentwebb.com. You'll find all sorts of goodies there. Be sure to join our Facebook community, a fantastic group, like-minded people banding together, supporting, empowering each other to make positive, transformative changes in our lives and then in the lives of the world at large. It's facebook.com/groups/students of self-empowerment. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Go out and enjoy yourself. Don't worry. Be happy. You feel good. We'll see you soon.